of some return to growth in even some of the peripheral countries, that we believe the banks remain under pressure in many of these systems. Clearly there's a lagging effect of non-performing loans lagging the economy, but I think there are also other elements on the horizon, for example the whole comprehensive assessment of the ECB, that could have an impact on banks' recognition of some of the problems in their balance sheets, which is a clear risk for 2014.
Johannes, that's the question that I have. I'm not quite sure how to think and evaluate about the ECB's role in all of this. I mean, at the end of the day, a better regulated, better capitalized banking system is a good thing for Europe. But in the interim, getting to that point is going to mean probably a retraction of risk, a further retraction of lending and so forth. Is the ECB's role in all of this positive or negative for Moody's outlook for the banking system and for the European economy?
Well, I think perhaps two aspects. I think on the one hand, ECB as such as a single supervisor, as now a unified supervisor for European banks, I think is a positive. I think we see through that a more harmonized level playing field, which I think over time, as you said, should probably be a positive for the banks and for investors as such. Not so much the ECB, but I think more the drive towards banking union is clearly also drive to take the sovereigns off the hook, to take the taxpayer off the hook, and to some extent reinstate the creditor being on the hook. So that, again, from a creditor's perspective, is negative.
That's the only thing that's changed, right? We don't have a backstop really for the banking system that is completely going to take some of the risk away from markets. And if you look at the caveats that have been buried into this stress testing program, some of the countries are not going to really participate to the full extent of the stress testing. So nothing's changed in 2 years, has it?
Well, I would not quite agree with that. I think from a creditor's perspective...
changed, but from the banking system, nothing's changed.
The risk for creditors has increased on the subordinated debt, for example. I think that is clearly an increased risk. And if we see that...
The risks haven't gone away. Things are just as bad as they ever looked if you want to invest in banks in Europe.
Well, that's what our outlook says. We remain negative on a lot of banking systems exactly for these aspects. On the other hand, what you can see, I think, is in some of the countries an exit trajectory. Now the question is, how fast will that trajectory be? How quick will it take hold against some of the remaining pressures? I mean, if you look at some of the peripheral countries, there still is a very weak domestic sector. So yes, the export sector is performing very well. So banks exposed to the export sector, or benefiting from that exposure, may do better than others. But those, I mean, most of them are primarily still exposed to the domestic sector, and that remains quite sluggish still.